Hey everybody, welcome back to Men Need to Be Heard. It's Dan, and I hope you're having an awesome day. I know I am. It's the fall season, and I love the fall season. It's my favorite time of year. Even though I live in a beach town, it's still my favorite time of year because all the tourists are now gone, and we get the beach to ourselves, and we don't have to put up with, we call it, don't tell anybody, we call them Torons. All right. And I'm also been enjoying my pumpkin spice. And I'm one of them. I'm a pumpkin spice fan. But it's my favorite time of year. It's just a good time every year for me, and that's why I enjoy fall so much. The other thing, though, that I'm excited about is my guest today. So one of the things that my followers always bring up to me, well, not always, but often bring up to me, is their struggles dealing with family court of various ways. Probably the biggest one being battles for custody. And it's heartbreaking to me to hear the stories. I've lived through it, both the good side and the bad. I've talked about it many times before, where I had a horrific divorce, and I had probably the best divorce you could ever have. In and out, never spent a second in court, and cost us, I don't know, like $500 or whatever it was, just to pay the attorney to write the thing and send it through. So I've seen both sides of it, and I've gone into court with guys as support for them and all that, and it's a tough thing, and that's why I wanted to have my guest back on. He was previously on the podcast back in February or March. He's an awesome guy. I consider him a good friend, and I will say he's one of them. He's an attorney, a divorce attorney. Dun, dun, dun. If I wouldn't get a copyright strike, I would put up the Darth Vader music, but that would get me a copyright strike, so I can't do that. So I'm going to introduce my friend, David Pisarra, who is a family law attorney. David, how are you, my friend?
I'm great, Dan. It's so wonderful to be back with you. Looking forward to today.
Are you enjoying your pumpkin spice?
I am. I've already had my first one at Starbucks. It's probably going to be maybe I'll do another one in December, but
it's December. I don't do Starbucks because their coffee's crap to me. I'm a Dunkin' Donuts whore. I freely admit it.
I understand that. I don't understand it. Like I've had Dunkin' Donuts. It's miserable. It's like
I'm from the Northeast, my friend. That's where Dunkin's from. So
doesn't make it right.
Starbucks to me is mud. But that if you wait till December, you got to have the peppermint one, right? Which
I don't even want to know about that.
Yeah, I don't either. So how are you, my friend? I'm so glad you decided to come back on and were willing to.
Thanks. I'm really excited to be here. I've got a bunch of new projects we've been working on, and things are going good. Had a great time. I was just in Podcast Movement in Denver, which was 3,000 podcasters, which was awesome. And, the world is changing.
It's interesting, not to sidetrack too much on that, but I did not make that, but I already have it on my calendar to look for it next year and go. But what I'm finding interesting is how much podcasting is growing. Everybody knows about Rogan. Tim Pool's another one that I just admire the hell out of. And what it's interesting to me is seeing how it's just destroying the mainstream media. I mean, you look, Rogan gets 15 million every time he puts a show up.
Right.
Tim Pool is getting like 300 to 100 or 300,000 to a million every night. And then you look at CNN and MSNBC and Fox, and all them combined don't get what he gets. And I think it is the wave of the future. And the beauty of it is it allows for what we're doing right now, having conversations, sharing thoughts, agreeing and disagreeing. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Podcast movement started because of the movement to bring together the independent podcasters, the independent voices on the internet. Mm-hmm. And as a consequence, it's really grown. That's exactly what you're speaking to, because everybody wants to hear something different. You know what you're going to get when you watch CNN. I know what Fox is going to give me. I know what MSNBC is going to give me. It's like watching a Marvel movie. It's the same storyline.
Pretty much, yeah.
They change the colors and maybe they change the characters a little bit, but it's the same story.
Exactly. So I wanted to have you back on because, as I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest issues that my followers have is dealing with family court in general, but one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue they have is dealing with custody issues. So when you were on last time, we kind of did the overview on family court and covered a lot of topics. Today, we want to narrow our focus. My camera's over here. I got to move. Narrow our focus down a little bit and really speak more about custody issues. And, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, has things changed in the past few years with regard to custody and family court in general? I'm old school. I have not set foot in family court since 2013. So it's 10 years ago was the last time I even entered the building. So have things changed, and in what way?
Things have changed. Both good and bad. They're good in that judges tend to be a little bit more aware of the realities that we've got working moms and working dads, and it's not impossible for children to have week on, week off custody shares or 2-2-3s. Those are becoming more commonplace. The bad is, as the domestic violence lobby has just driven to expand the definition of domestic violence to the point where you could land like an A380 through the fucking loopholes in the definitions of what is domestic violence these days.
Well, I mean,
if you want to tell me if you can tell me a clear definition of what coercive control is, that's a definition that's a domestic abuse in California. Like I don't know what those words mean. I don't honestly know at what point is coercive control like okay and not abuse, and then when does it become abusive?
Is there a legal definition for what it is, or is it just being promulgated by the domestic violence industry?
There's not a real clear definition in the statute.
Okay, so it's kind of like best interest of the children. Everybody talks about it. Nobody knows what the hell it is.
I know it when I see it.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's interesting you talk about the domestic violence industry because for those that don't know, I was a peer counselor for domestic violence shelter. Primarily, I ran a group for men. I know the ins and outs. This is 20 years ago. Things I'm sure have changed within that, but I'm also willing to bet they haven't changed much. Men are viewed as pariahs. I literally saw men come in and then take the paperwork and throw it in the trash afterward. So it's never recorded. I saw what happened in courtrooms when I went in with guys from that group and helped them out. Do you think the judiciary is more aware of the truth that men do get abused? That it's the majority of domestic violence, by the way, is both ways. It's not usually one abusing the other. The overwhelming amount of it is mutual. That said, there are exceptions where it is one doing it to the other. Do you think the judiciary is more aware of it, or are they still following that Duluth model?
Yes, they're still following the Duluth model, but I think they are becoming more aware of the fact that it cuts both ways. As men are going into court more and saying, listen, here's what's going on. Here's why I need to be an involved parent. Here's why I need to have 50% custody. Judges are starting to see what's going on. It's a slow process, and part of the reason it's slow is like in a county like Los Angeles, where we have 40 maybe different family law judges across the county. Those turn over really quickly. Like the vast bulk of those are probably under 4 years experience on the bench.
Really?
It's just, we don't have long-term judges who really have the time and the experience to get the training they know and have worked in the trenches long enough to be able to suss out really quickly, like, oh, that's a borderline personality. That one's lying. That's a narcissistic personality. That one's lying. Here's how I know this one's not telling the truth. Here's how I know this one's making this stuff up. And by the time that they get there, they're ready to move on and go do criminal, which is so much cleaner. And for corporate law or some bankruptcy or probate's always a fun one.
In California, are they elected or appointed?
Both.
Because I'm thinking to New York specifically. In New York, they're elected and they're 10-year terms. And generally, once they're on, they fill out their full term.
But there's two different things there. There's the term of how long are they actually serving, and then there's which court are they serving in. Because we have family court and probate court, bankruptcy court and civil court and criminal court. So you can have an assignment in family court and hate it and be talking to your supervising judge and say, like, I've got to get out of here. I'm going to blow my brains out. And they'll transfer you from family court over to criminal.
Interesting.
So you're still on the bench, but you're no longer in the same assignment.
Yeah, the counties that I dealt with primarily, which were Albany County, Saratoga County, and upstate New York, the same judges were there forever. I mean, and if you got a good one,
which is bad.
Yeah,
right?
if it was a good one, it was great. If you got a bad one, and trust me, there were some bad ones, you were fucked. And you know, there was one judge that was so bad, even the lawyers didn't like him. I mean, he was.
That all the time.
And you know, he finally retired. I forget how many years he was on the bench for, like 20 years, a family court bench. The same support magistrate is still there. The last I knew, and I had him in '95. This dude's still there, as far as I know. I mean,
I don't all memorized like it's easy.
Oh, he just this is how he does every case. All right, Mr. Robert, blah blah blah. He doesn't even look at you. I mean, he doesn't look up. He does nothing. He just, and he is textbook to the law. He won't vary from it at all. Like, you know, you could sit and say here.
That's an okay thing so long as you know what the law is, and you can. If I know what the law is, and I know this is the way he's going to apply it,
right?
At least give you good advice. I can say, here's what we're facing. Here's what's going to happen. Let's not go spend a bunch of money on stuff that's not going to work. Let's do the intelligent thing and just take your lumps and move on.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, and I want to get into this a little bit as we move along, is getting the advice from the attorneys and all that. But to your point, I generally, when it was a support issue, I went in by myself, pro se, and just kind of handled it because my attorney knew I could do it. And she would say, here's what you got to be watch out for. If it was custody, I always had her. There was no way I was going in without her. Or if it was a serious enough issue with anything. But I always credited her because she's like, look, the law is cut and dried on this. You don't need me for this. Because I was getting hauled in for the stupidest things. And it was like,
in family court? That's so unusual.
I know. It was like, well, I always tell the story. I was in family court pretty much every month for 10 years. I mean, and a lot of it was just inane. He was 4 minutes late picking up the kids. Motion to, you know, I'm like, come on.
Yeah. I applied last month for a restraining for an ex parte because mom won't let the kid wear the Apple Watch that dad bought.
That's inane. Why?
I know.
Why?
I know.
What is the benefit? Never mind. Let's get back to what we want to talk about because we could go for 4 hours just on that.
We can, but on some level, it's like it does tie in because this goes back to like the custody stuff. And why is custody so difficult? Because you get these people who are fighting over silly things.
And yeah, let's kind of delve into the custody issue because that is the primary one I want to talk about today. So. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, we were talking about had things changed. So back in my day, if I could use that term, pretty much it was cut and dried. Mom was getting custody. Dad was getting visitation, and it was spelled out in the law as visitation. He was turned into a visitor. And we had the statistics that mom got awarded primary custody, physical custody, about 93% of the time. About 3 or 4% they worked out a joint agreement as far as time, shared parenting, we'll call it. And then about 3%, 2 to 3%, dad got custody, and was almost invariably mom was either a drug addict or found guilty of something.
Severe mental.
Yeah, there had to be there was absolutely no way the judge could give her custody, was basically what we were finding. Right. Have things changed from that? I know it's different from state to state, but that was pretty much it across the U.S. in the 90s, early 2000s. Have things changed on that much? I know that some states have passed shared parenting, but in general, I'm talking.
In general, it's getting better. It's probably closer to like 80% of the time mom gets primary custody and dads are at 20%. We've got like Missouri just passed their 50-50 law. Mm-hmm. Florida's got it. There's a couple other states. We're going to see how that plays out. I imagine what's going to happen is there's going to be an initial like spike in domestic violence charges and abuse charges and negligent parenting charges, and they're an alcoholic, and then that may go away. I believe I want to say Kansas has it, and the early reports out of there are that it actually dropped the domestic violence silver bullet ploys because it was seen through. The judges are seeing through it.
Yeah, I saw the same thing.
I don't know how it's all going to play out.
It'll be interesting to see because, and just for those that don't know, essentially the change is that instead, I always call it coming from out to in, which is one person's getting primary, the other's a visitor, the old paradigm, and then you come in from that. And it usually worked out to roughly 85% of the time the kids were with mom, 15 with dad, with the standard order, weekend visitation, pizza date. Now, shared parenting, I'm simplifying the hell out of this, I know. You start in the middle and work your way out. And they are finding, now Florida will be an interesting case because it's just passed recently. I did a whole show on this.
It just started this month, actually.
Yeah, so it's way too soon to tell. But Kansas did have promising data behind it. It's reducing the conflict. And hopefully that'll start driving more states. But that's why I wanted to ask you, because I'm starting to see more cases where dads are getting custody or equal time. Just naturally.
When they go ask for it and set themselves up for a win, they're more likely they're starting to get there. Yes, definitely. And we're seeing that. Dads are now starting to step up in a way that they haven't, and that's very much a generational shift. And I'm seeing this across the board. The younger generations, they don't get married, they just have kids, because why get married?
Yeah.
I have a hard argument. Gay community fought so hard for it, and I'm like, I do this.
Well, if I can be honest with you, back when, what was it, in the 90s, they were fighting over that, right? At least in New York. Yeah. We got to get gay marriage. And I have good friends that were gay, and I would say to them, why? The Bar Association wants that. What does that tell you? They were pushing hard for it. There's a reason, gentlemen, and it's not because they care about you as a person. They want your money, because you get married, you're going to get divorced. Lo and behold,
although I'll say this, everybody was like, "Oh, you're going to do so many more gay divorces." I'm like, no, I've done like 3.
That was the other point I was going to make is gay men do not divorce. Lesbians do.
Oh, and lesbians fight over custody to bring this back to custody.
Yeah, but
good lesbian custody battle lasts 15 years.
About the same
as
mine. Our
longest battle was like 15 years.
That's about the same as mine. So let's kind of dive. Well, that's an interesting. I didn't know that far with it. Wow. But yeah, kudos to the gay men for staying together. I applaud you and all of them.
You know why? I mean, we can get a little bit.
Do tell. I would genuinely curious.
Open relationships.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
You're educating me because I had no idea.
I get together with the guy and we fall in love and we have that great little honeymoon period for the first 2 years and everything's wonderful. And we've built a house and we bought an apartment building and we got a dog and life is wonderful and we love Christmases and birthdays and all that stuff. But I'm not that interested anymore sexually. I'm like, I want some variety. I want something different.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, I think I want to go do the pool boy. And my partner's like, yeah, I'll take the gardener. And
I love it.
And you know what? It's like, okay, go play and come back to the house because it's playing. So it's that level of open. And there's all kinds of varieties of that. But that's, I think, a big factor.
And you're starting to see that in heterosexual couples, I think, a little bit more, too, where it's becoming more open. I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing. I don't judge. My belief is rock solid. I don't care what you do, who you do it with, as long as it's consenting and you don't involve kids or animals. Other than that, I don't care what anybody does. It's
a good thing, I think, in terms of relationships, and it's bad for business. But what are you gonna do?
Whatever. Anyway, thank you for that tidbit of information. You educated me. All right, so let's dive into custody. So one of the things that I did when I was doing my custody battle is I made some mistakes. I freely admit them. Like I said earlier, I did pro se on a lot of my things, but it was primarily support stuff. I didn't really do the custody, but I still made mistakes, even with a fabulous attorney. And I say nothing but good things about her. But I wanted to ask you, because you did a video 2-3 weeks ago about the 3 common mistakes dads make going to family court. I forget the exact title of it or how you phrased it, but I think you wanted to rephrase it to 3 fatal mistakes that dads make. And can you kind of share what they are and give a little detail on them?
Absolutely. The 3 fatal mistakes that dads make going into a custody battle are, number one, they don't have a game plan. You can't play chess by the rules of Candyland. You've got to know the game, and you've got to know what it is you're actually hoping to accomplish. And so game plans are really very specific for a particular hearing or trial. Then they go in and they don't have a strategy to win. And the strategy is sort of the overarching, we're going to have multiple hearings. There's going to be custody. There's going to be visitation. There's going to be money. Maybe there's going to be holiday stuff. There's going to be some ex partes. You've got to have a strategy for overall, what's the theme of your case? How are you doing that? And then lastly, they're going in unprepared. They're not gathering the documents. They're not gathering the witnesses. They're not pulling things together so that when they go in with a game plan as part of the strategy, they can go to the judge and read a statement of the case and say, here's what I'm saying, Your Honor, and I've got these 3 witnesses who are going to testify to this, and these are my 23 exhibits that are going to support my statements here. They're going in and they're saying, well, Your Honor, I've got witnesses, and the judge says, great, where are they? Well, I can get them here.
Oops, that's not going to work.
Wrong. I've got text messages to show she's lying. Okay, are they here? No. Why haven't you printed those out? Why aren't there copies for the judge, the other side? You've got to know what you're doing going in. You have to be prepared. And so those are the 3 big mistakes I see guys make going into court. They think the game is one thing. They think it's Candyland. I can go in and be like, I'm a great dad. Give me my 50% custody. That's not going to cut it. Every dad's a great dad because that's what they all say. So it's meaningless from the judge's perspective. Not that you're meaningless, but that's what the judge is hearing is something that has no real meaning. And you've got to be able to go in and show the judge, here's why I'm a great dad. Here's all the things I do. Here's the backup. Here's the evidence. Here's the witnesses to support me in my statements. And so if you go in with a game plan and you understand what you're doing, you've got a much better chance of winning.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I remember when I was talking with guys and dealing with it myself, I believe the term is rules of evidence. You have to know how to get evidence entered. And as a layman, that was something I really struggled with because like you said, text messages didn't exist in my time, but I know of guys that would go in and go, well, here's my phone. It's right here. You can, no, that's not, no.
Cut it.
It's not going to work. And you have to know how to present the evidence. And I'm no fan of judges, but to defend them, they have to follow the rule of law and the rule of evidence, correct? They can't just they have a lot of leeway, but they can't just say, yeah, I'll let you submit your phone because, it's fine. That's not going to happen.
Well, occasionally it'll happen depending on the situation. I've seen judges allow somebody to share the phone back and forth, and then the judge will. Okay. I've seen that. It's not optimal. It doesn't happen often, and you're rolling the dice because if the judge is it's 11:45 and the judge is off the bench in minutes, trust me, they're not letting extra evidence in.
Yep.
9:15 and they got 2.5 hours to go. It's all right, we'll bend a little more here. So you have to be conscious, and it's things like that you have to know going in. What's your schedule? What's your game plan? How are you planning on actually proving this stuff up to the judge? And how long is it going to take? Because if you go in and say to a judge, it's going to be, I've got 5, I need 10 minutes. He's going to give you 10 minutes. And if you go over, you may be done.
Yeah, because you could end up pissing him off or frustrating him or something like that. And
remember, judges have that bailiff. That's a union job. Mm-hmm. That court reporter, if you're lucky enough to have them these days, they're on an hourly. They have union rules. That clerk works for the county. That clerk doesn't work for the judge. There are county union rules.
Right.
And if the judge is violating those, he's violating a union rule. Well, how well does it work when you violate union rules?
And it's fun. I'll throw this one out too because it was well known with my judge. If you were going in the summer, you better be done by noon because he was on the golf course in the afternoon, and you were not screwing up his tea time. You had I think he went till 12:30. I think that was his cutoff for lunch.
Yeah.
But after that, you were done. And, if your case wasn't presented, oh well, too bad. So but it was, everybody knew it, So it was like, especially if you got them on a Friday, it was hilarious. Everybody knows these things. It's just funny, but you don't know them when you're walking in on your own. Whereas a divorce attorney or a family law attorney knows the judge's routine, I'll call it. And that's one of the reasons I always say to guys, look, I get you want to go pro se. It can save you money, but you got to be aware of some things. And something like that, if you're not aware of it, could screw you. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like just because you either want to go pro se or you have to, doesn't mean you shouldn't do your homework and be prepared to go into court to do the job. I may want to decide that I'm going to change the oil on my car, but I learned how to do that. I didn't just get under there and start unscrewing things. I learned this is the right bolt to unscrew.
Yeah, don't take it to Jiffy Lube, because I literally had it where they unscrewed the transmission fluid and poured oil in it, but I won't go there. We're not going to go there. It was. I got a new engine out of it. I would hope. So let's talk about this a little bit, because back in my day, again, I'll use that phrase. There were a fair number of guys going pro se. I mean, the numbers have changed, but ballpark, it was somewhere. The expectation was if you were going to get a divorce and it was contested, the numbers they would throw out and they would try and get retainers for was 15 to 20,000. Most of the attorneys were in that range. If it was going to be a custody battle, they might be looking to get 40, 50, 60. And this is 10, 15 years ago. Has that changed? Because that's one of the biggest reasons I think guys try and go pro se is they know it's going to cost them, say, $50,000, and they don't have it.
Well, A, it's going to cost them a ton of money. B, they're pretty sure they're going to lose anyways.
True.
And C, what ends up happening is each market has their own water level, right? Mm. So, I live in Los Angeles, but Los Angeles is the huge, tremendously huge county. So we've got, even within Los Angeles, different markets. So I live on the west side in Santa Monica. Lawyers on my side of town are anywhere from $450 to $1,000.
Okay.
Some of the celebrity ones probably going up to $1,500. So there's a big range, and obviously retainers are going to vary based on that. Now, if you go into the far east side of the county, Lancaster, Palmdale, regular hourly wages for a seasoned attorney, someone with 15, 20 years experience, $300-$400 an hour. Mm-hmm. For the best in town. So it's a different environment. So you have to factor that in too, as to what are you really looking at.
But it, like you said, it kind of falls to the level because of what people can afford. Because, an attorney in LA versus an attorney in Albany, New York, where I was, my attorney was $400 an hour 10 years ago, right? Versus,
10 years ago, that was about, and it was, I think I was $450, $495 an hour 10 years ago.
Versus, though, an attorney in, East bumfuck whatever town, who might be getting $200. But the town, the average pay is minimum wage. Bigger city, obviously the pay's higher. So it's all relative, yes, but it kind of goes with the economy. I think that's safe to say.
Absolutely.
But it ends up being an expense. And I do think that a lot of guys want to have their children and get dissuaded from. It's sad that they have to fight for their children, but they get dissuaded from it because the 2 points. One, they know they're probably not going to win. And two, the cost.
And they're being strapped financially because now usually we're looking at 2 apartments, 2 cable bills, plus child support, plus all the other expenses that come along with kids. Adding on, even if it's another $5,000 or $10,000 for some guys, that's a huge amount of money for some people.
And especially if you have to come up with that retainer, right? If you've moved out, she's cleared out the bank accounts. Which, you can go to court and fight and get some of it back, but you got to be able to afford the retainer to get the attorney to fight it back,
Right.
And it's that's why I see a lot of guys trying to go their own way with it and trying to run themselves through the family court. And again, I freely admit I did a lot of that, and I spent hours and hours researching the law. I was out on Westlaw and all these things. I had access to it, and doing research, and it was very time consuming. And to pat myself on the back, I learned a lot, and I thought I was competent, but I'm not an attorney. I never was an attorney. I don't have the training you have. That's where I think that there's that gap. And I want to kind of talk about that a little bit and kind of talk into some of the things that I know you want to address, which is, one, what is the realities when you're going into court and the expectations that you should have, and then how do you prepare for that?
Well, part of the realities is it's a very scary environment, and that's why people hire lawyers, because they don't know what they're walking into. Mm-hmm. So what I'm trying to do, like with my TikToks, is give people an idea of what is it you're really facing here. When you walk in that courtroom and you've got the bailiff over here, and then you've got the judicial clerk on this side, and you're walking in there and you have to start defending yourself. How do you prepare to speak to the judge? What's that going to be like? Do you have your evidence ready? And so that's one of the reasons why I pulled together the Dad's Child Custody Action Plan, was to walk someone through the process of literally walking through the doors. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to have a bailiff over here, and you're going to have to check in here and let them know you're present and ready. And you're going to have to meet with the other side. You're going to have to exchange exhibits. And that means you have to come to court with exhibits, and you have to have one for the other side, and one for the witness, and one for the judge, and one for yourself, and to be ready to actually go in and do the battle that you need to go do.
It's funny you mentioned all that, because I remember teaching guys, forget even getting into the courtroom, getting into the courthouse. You've got to go through the metal detector. You did not want to piss those guys off either, because they will make your life a living hell, right? I'm like, empty your pockets before you go in. Make sure you don't have even your keys before you walk through that detector. You catch them on a good day, they might not care. They'll wand you and you go on. You catch them on a bad day, or you're, creating a line. And if I always postulated it gets back to the judge. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't know. But if you created a problem for those bailiffs out there, I got to believe they're...
Here's my experience. Most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time it doesn't. However...
there it is. Okay.
On those ones where... And the reality is this. The really crazy people aren't going to hear me. The really crazy people, that gets back to the judge.
Yeah.
They know, okay, we're facing this person again. It's going to be another day with the borderline personality or the narcissistic person, the schizophrenic who's convinced that something's going on, that everybody's against them.
Yeah, I always said treat them as the best way you can. Yes, sir. No, sir. What would you like me to do, sir? Be polite and be respectful. It just helps you. And I think you're kind of saying the same thing in the sense that if you do all that, nobody's going to care per se. But if you go the other way and I've seen guys scream and yell at these guys. Why do I got to go through a metal detector? Why are you searching my bag?
Dude, I walk into Santa Monica Courthouse. It's this sleepy little 3-courtroom courthouse. I'm known in the community. I've been going there for 25 years. Everybody at the door knows me. They still make me take my belt off.
Yeah.
I walk in downtown Los Angeles. There's 5,000 people a day going through the courthouse there. It's always different people at the gate. Leave your belt on. They don't care.
Yeah. So it's the nuance of each court and how they're approaching it. So exactly. we're talking.
And that's one of the other things I talk about in the course is know what the judge is like that you're going to be in front of. Go sit in for a couple of days and watch how they react.
That was something I was.
Other people.
Let's go and explore that topic, because that was something I wanted to bring up. So I've always talked to guys about this, because I have guys that I coach that are going through that, and I'm like, you need to go into family court, not for your case, but a couple of weeks ahead of time if you can, whatever works, for a couple of days, and just sit there. And the first thing that they almost invariably say to me is, I can do that? Yes, you can. There are exceptions. I know adoptions is one, and sometimes they'll close the courtroom for certain things. But in general, you can sit there. Now, you got to be quiet. You can't say anything, but you can take notes. And I would say go observe the judge, see what's going on, educate yourself on the process, because now you're not emotionally involved. You're seeing what's going on. You're seeing how, I always talk about my scenario. The first time I walked into family court, I thought it was going to be like LA Law and, Law and Order. It ain't nothing like that, Can you talk a little bit about that process? Because I'm sure you cover that stuff.
So when you're going into court, you definitely want to do your research. It's the opposition research, and the opposition is the judge. You need to go sit there and understand, like, how are they going to view witnesses, and pay attention to how they're treating the parties. Because if the judge is a little bit more kind, as it were, to one side than the other, pay attention to what's the gender of that party. Does the judge have a bias? Because if that's the case, you at least know going in, that's what you're going to be facing. Mm-hmm. And watch how people are dealing with the bailiffs. Watch how they're handling the exhibits. Watch how things are happening so that you're not scared so much going in. Because one of the biggest problems with public speaking, which is what you're going to be doing, is that anxiety, that like, oh my God, my first time, I don't know what's going to happen. Yep. The judge is going to yell at me. Probably not. But you need to know, maybe you do have a judge who yells. But if you know that going in, you're not going to get so affected by it because you know, like, that's going to happen. You expect it. Or you're going to know, like, this is a judge who lets people go on and on and on. And he's going to let my ass tell the shaggy dog story about what a horrible person I am and how much of an alcoholic I am and I'm a drug addict and I like kill puppies. And then now you get going. You have the opportunity to go in and give all of your evidence that disproves all of that because you know the judge is going to give you the time. Or you've got that judge who's like, you got 3 minutes, go. And that means you've got to get everything really tight, which means get it in there, be prepared, have a written statement. So knowing the style of the courtroom you're going to be going into is a huge factor in your own success and keeping you calm.
Yeah, those are great points, David. Now, one of the things that I tried to do also was I would go into the courtroom and do my research, but I also tried to get input from others. Is there other ways that maybe I didn't do that you can think of to kind of prepare yourself for that situation? I know we're going to talk about your course, and obviously that's the answer, but other than that, because we're going to get to that, is there other things that someone going into family court should do ahead of time to kind of, observation's the big one, I think, but also maybe something they should read up on? Like, for example, for me, as I mentioned earlier, presenting the evidence, how to do that. What else should they be doing to prepare?
One of the big factors is just knowing what the law is. People Google the law and they listen to like some crazy aunt who wrote an article in another state and think like that's going to apply in their own state because it's what they want to hear. Well, that's not the way to do this. You have to go look at your own state's code section and do the research and find out exactly what the standards are, what's the judge going to be looking to figure out what's going to happen in this case. And that's a huge factor because I've seen people go into court and they're like, well, I know that I'm entitled to this. And no, you're not.
Right.
What are you basing that on? Well, I read this case. It's like, well, that's 3 states over. You might want to pay attention to where you're.
Yeah, I actually saw where a guy just destroyed his own case because he was trying to cite law from another state, and the judge got pissed. Yeah, pissed because he was being adamant. Well, I forget what the case was. Whatever the case was, blah blah blah. And if that case had applied in the state, he's right. It didn't apply in New York State. Sorry, dude.
That's an issue.
And he kept hammering at it. This is the law, and the judge is like, no, it's not, dude. I'm paraphrasing because the judge got pissed, but because
you're taking up the judge's time, and they've got 23 other cases they have to deal with that day.
Right. So when you're trying to research the statutes, I already know the answer to this, but what's the best way for a layman to do so?
Well, obviously there's Google, but you have to do it correctly, and that would be going by your state, and then the family code. And then some keyword that is relevant to what it is you're looking to do. So for me, it would be like California family code dealing with child custody or physical custody or legal custody. What's the issue we're going to be talking about? And usually that information is on the front of whatever the paperwork is that you've received. There's frequently something in there that says, this is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about physical custody or legal custody.
Yeah, I mean, that's important. And I always say put it in quotations for each particular variable that you're putting in, because that'll narrow it down some. I mean, I got to the point where I was reading.
The thing that's beyond me.
Yeah, I was actually reading the statute, the state law, because sometimes that was helpful to me to see, okay,
Absolutely.
This is what it says. So this is what the judge, in theory, has to follow. So that's one of the ways I was getting educated. So I went in and read the existing statute as the legislature did it for like child custody, for example, or support or whatever. And when you're dealing with support, at least in New York, there ain't no leeway. The way that statute's written, it's cut and dried. You're paying 17, 24, 31, done. I don't care about your sob story. I don't care that, your car broke down. You're paying, and that's that.
Till the age of 21.
Well, in New York, it's 21, or if the child's in college, it goes past that, which a lot of guys never. Yeah.
Lord, who passed that law?
Don't get me started. I've actually heard of cases where they're paying up till 26 because of the medical. You can carry the kid on the medical until 26, so you get ordered to pay the child's health insurance until 26. But every state's different, right? California may or may not have that. I don't know.
No, we're 18 and 19 if they're still in high school. So, hey, we're actually more progressive than New York.
Yeah, New York is 21, but they got all these exceptions in there. And if I didn't go and read the law as written, I would not have known that. And so that's part of the preparation we're talking about is you've got to be willing to make that investment in your time if you're going to try and go on your own. Again, I always argue when it comes to custody, you should get an attorney. Good, bad, or indifferent, there's too many variables that you might not know. But I wanted to get your opinion on that.
Even if you can't afford to hire an attorney, I think you need to at least get a good consult with somebody that's got 10 years experience. Like, go in and be very succinct. Like, here's the situation. Here's the age of the kid. Here's where I live. Here's where mom lives. Here's the school they're going to. Here's the developmental delay issues, if any, that we have to deal with. Here's my income, her income. Now, how do you see this playing out? Because that will be the best, $400 or $500 you've ever spent for a consult to get a lay of the land from somebody that understands what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm. And if
you can't afford to come up with, a $5,000 or $10,000 retainer, at least going in like you're not getting completely hosed, because this is what your own hopeful lawyer would have given you.
So you're saying, as opposed to, I always tell people go see 4 or 5 lawyers and just have a conversation with them. For a couple of reasons. One, you are looking for a quality lawyer that's going to work for you and that you work with. They're your partner. They're not a lawyer in you. I mean, they are, but if you can't be open and honest with them, they can't represent you to the best of their ability. And then the second part of that is every lawyer you go visit and meet with, your ex can't use. It's dirty, but
Yes, but I'm going to say that make sure that those are paid consults.
So that's the next thing.
Don't just go wasting people's time just to waste their time.
Right,
because as soon as I hear that, I'm not taking you on as a client because I'm already resentful.
Oh yeah, I would tell you that.
If I'm on a phone call with somebody, well, the other 3 lawyers I talked to said the same thing. I'm like, then why are you calling me? Why are you wasting my time? Like, now I'm not going to represent you no matter how much money you tell me.
Interesting. Yeah.
You're a user.
See, I would look at it from the opposite view. I interviewed a half dozen different attorneys. I went and met with them. And my answer to them, and this was the legitimate reason I did it, is look, I need to know that we can have that bond because you are representing me. You are the one that's fighting for my children.
Right.
And I need to know that, and I met with a couple of them and I knew within 5 minutes, no way. And I told them that, look, I could tell already it's just not going to work. No offense to you. We're just not compatible. It's kind of like a relationship, right? A marriage.
Exactly like that. But it's also, remember, like what we do. We are using our time and our experience.
Right.
And you're taking my time. And if you are going to waste my time, you're telling me from the get-go that you don't value me.
Interesting. See, that's why I want you on, is to share those different opinions,
Listen, I do 15, 20-minute phone conversations. I don't know, probably 7 a week, because that's the initial free consult.
And that's fair enough.
If I can't figure out in that long, like there's going to be an immediate problem or we're going to get along fine.
Yeah, it shouldn't take you. I would say 10 to 15 minutes is max. You should know. It's just like, you're going up to a girl in a bar and you're meeting her. You should know within 10 minutes whether you're interested or not, and vice versa.
Trust your gut.
Hopefully.
The only times I've ever really been screwed by clients where it's gone really south, I ignored my gut.
Really? See, It works both ways. Now, I would argue I trusted my gut, and that's why I got the attorney I did. So
we're vetting you as much as you're vetting us.
What? Just out of curiosity, what are you looking for as an attorney? This is fascinating to me. So if I were to meet with you, what are you looking for from me, other than how much money I have? Because I know every person listening is going to say that's the first thing, but that's not really it.
It's truthfully, it's not really it, because it doesn't matter. I've had clients who are worth $52 million who are the cheap-ass bastards, and I've had clients who were scraping by who paid every dime of their bill. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't. That's not a good indicator. What is a good indicator to me is, what's your mental state? How are you coming across? Are you reasonable? Are you rational? Can you be reasoned with? Can you be negotiated with? Are you making just outrageous demands that no matter what's going to happen, I know we're going to let you down, and I'm inviting problems. I'm inviting you to hate me and leave Yelp reviews that I'm a horrible lawyer and that I defied what you told me to do, and then I'm going to be fighting a state bar complaint 5 years from now just because you got a bug up your ass. No. I want somebody who I can have an honest discussion with, who's got a reasonable view of the situation and has reasonable expectations. And then we'll figure out the money stuff.
See, that tells me how good a lawyer you are, because that's what separates you from the bad ones. Because the bad ones will take those guys on, or more precisely, the women on, and ratchet up the fees because they know, oh, I got an emotional one. I can stir this one and keep that pot going until I drain every penny. That speaks volumes about the quality of you as a man and as an attorney. And I'm not saying that because you're sitting in front of me. I'm saying this because I want the people listening or watching to understand that's what you want to hear from the attorney that you're meeting with. And you want them to be honest with you. Like, Dan, you got a chance in hell of winning. We'll go in, we'll do the best we can, but you aren't going to win. Or, you know what?
And I say that frequently.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about that. Or, hey, here's your case. This is what we need to do. It's going to take us a while. It's going to cost a little bit of money. But I think you have a reasonable chance, no guarantees, because this is how my attorney talked to me. Look, Dan, here's the situation. You do have a case. You have a reasonable chance of winning. But I'm going to have to spend a few hours on this, and it's going to cost you $10,000. Do you want to proceed forth?
Right.
That's what you're looking for your attorney to say to you, because I've seen guys fight and spend $20,000 to save $4,000 in child support. Why? It's insane. And attorneys that allowed them to do that. And this goes to where how as a layman, how do I spot that in an attorney that, or more precisely, not so much that I'm hiring, but my ex's attorney? Because this is something I hear from a lot of guys about, which is, I'm trying to be reasonable, but she's not, and her attorney is doing fill in the blank. I can see the look on your face.
So I've got this coffee mug. Trying to figure out how to do
there it is. Yeah, you got it. Yep.
It only takes one asshole to create a shit show. Well, let's start there.
Yep.
And the reality is, if that's what your ex hires, you have no control over that anyways. Like that's game over. But the other side of it is that's who you got involved with. So why were you attracted to that in the first place? Like there's an issue there, which is the other one.
Oh, here we go. I love this.
We got two of them.
You got to turn that one a little bit. There you go.
There we go.
Mother Teresa didn't marry the devil.
Because we get that one a lot. You know, when you're reading the paperwork and mom's like, "Oh, I'm the saint. I've sacrificed my life. I do everything for my kids," and he's this horrible drug addict, alcoholic, abuser, womanizer who cheats on me,
Yeah.
but he should still pay $20,000 a month child support. I'm like, what's really going on here?
You just described about 4 million TikTok videos that went up in the last 2 weeks, because that's what you see, right? You see all these guys do it too, but I don't think anywhere near to the extent where, you know, I see it every single day, and I know it's the algorithm feeding it to me, but these women going on and just bashing their ex and throwing and they're saints, and I'm like, oh honey, if you're the one on the online doing this, you're probably the problem, number one. And number two,
Yeah.
if I'm your ex, I am saving that video and taking it into family court. Odds are it's going to have an effect. So let's kind of step back now. So we've started talking about preparing to go into family court, and this is the Dad's Action Pack that you started putting together.
That's child custody action.
Sorry, I knew I was saying it wrong. That's why I was looking down to catch the real name. Can you talk a little bit about what it is and why you did it?
So it's a short course. It's about, right now, 95 minutes, about 14 episodes. We're doing a huge revision. We're redoing all the slides. In 6 weeks, it's going to look totally different and be way better. But it's designed to take somebody who has a court hearing that's coming right up, and they've got a week, maybe 3 weeks before they've got to go and be in front of a judge. And it's like, you've got to take action right now and get ready right now. And so it's designed to take you through the process of writing your declaration, which is your statement to the judge, and what you need to put in there to show the judge how and why you're a great dad. I said earlier, you can't just go in and be, I'm a great dad. Like, that's not going to work. Mm-hmm. But if you go in and say, I'm a great dad, and here are 23 reasons why. I've done this in the kindergarten. I did this in first grade. I'm in the school Boy Scouts. I did this. I'm on the sports team. I'm coaching this team. I know their doctors. I've been at all their doctor appointments. I know what their food allergies are. This is how I handle meltdowns. This is what their food allergies are. This is the pictures of their crib or their bed in my apartment. Here's how my apartment's been baby-proof. Here's the parenting class I took that's age appropriate. Here's the co-parenting class I took that mom didn't want to attend. Here's the first aid class I took that mom hasn't done. If you go through and you start listing all of this stuff in a declaration, you're preparing yourself to go in and show to the judge that you're a great dad. And then I have courses in there that teach dads how to actually present in court. So it's how to prepare a statement of the case. And then it's how to actually speak in court. Because people usually do one of two things. They either totally freeze and just say, like, I give up. Like, I want my 50% custody. That's not going to work.
Right.
Or they start talking really, really fast. They go so fast that the court reporter can't keep up, and the judge is getting frustrated, and they don't know what they're saying, and they talk themselves right out of a win. And so there's a little bit of like Toastmasters public speaking that has to happen, and I teach that in the course as well. And there's little things like, do you have to show up in court in a suit? Well, if you don't wear a suit every day, that's probably a bad idea. You're probably going to go in and be even more anxious because now you're dressed in a way that you're not familiar with. So don't wear a suit if you don't wear a suit all the time. Don't wear a tie if you don't wear a tie all the time. Go in, look presentable, have a clean shirt, have clean jeans, have clean work boots, be properly groomed, and show the judge that you're respectful of them. Mm-hmm. But you don't have to dress a certain way to try and impress them. What's going to impress the judge is what's in your paperwork. Because that's the other thing I teach these people, is that your first impression is not when you walk in that courtroom. Your first, most important impression is in the paperwork.
Yeah, I'm smiling as you're saying that because I've seen it over and over again. That judge is going to be reading that paperwork first and foremost, and it's got to be done right, and it's got to be succinct. I've seen people send novels, and I'm like, and it's that, I'm trying to help these guys out that are doing on their own and doing ex parte stuff and all this stuff, and they write novels, and I'm guilty of that. But I always had someone read it for me and start editing, just like you would a book. because you start blah, blah, blah. You're taking the judge's time up. You're going to piss him off.
The judge wants to know there's a beach. I don't want to know every grain of sand.
Yeah. Bullet point type thing is the way I always kind of approached it. And sometimes I actually used bullet points, right? And
those are very effective.
That's
what you want the judge to pay attention to.
I think the longest I ever did was 2.5 pages, and I tried to keep it even under that. Sometimes I'm just talking for the initial thing, like here's what I'm trying to do. Maybe that was right or wrong. I don't know. But that
did you win?
Yes.
And it was right.
Yeah,
it was right.
There is no solid right or wrong, right? And by the way, I always showed up in a suit, so I don't know. I just thought it was respectful. I
did. I have to.
Well, yeah, I always viewed it as show up like you're going for a job interview that you would go for. That's how I phrase it.
Right.
And I would see guys show up in ripped jeans and wife beater T-shirts with stains all over them. It matters. I saw how the judge looked at them, and I
just remember they're deciding who's going to raise a child that they haven't met
in minutes or a couple of hours.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's
mostly minutes.
Yeah.
Mostly you've got 15 to 20 minutes generally in a hearing, which is the other thing that people don't understand. They think I'm going to have this long drawn out O.J. Simpson hearing where I can prove everything that they ever lied about. Honey. You've got 15, 45 minutes. If you're going over that, the judge is like, okay, we're going to set this for a longer hearing. Come back in 3 months and we'll give you an afternoon.
That's exactly what happened to me the first time I went into court. Because Law and Order, Family Law, or whatever TV show you want to do, that's what I thought was going to happen, right? I'm going to present my case. She's going to present her case. We may be there all day. No, I had about 15 minutes. And the judge, and he did exactly what you said. All right, I don't have enough time for this right now. He didn't say it that way, but he had another case pending or something like that. We're going to reschedule, and he pushed it out. I think it was 6 weeks or whatever, which actually turned out to be a godsend for me because then I got an attorney to handle it for me, as opposed to
frequently. And frequently, those continuances are the best thing that ever happened because now you have an opportunity to go fix the things that you didn't get right the first time.
Yeah. See, and that's what I'm trying to impress on the audiences. I've made these mistakes, Listen to me and listen to David because we're trying to help you out. Because I know what it's like. You think you're in a great marriage, and next thing you know, you got a TRO against you that came out of nowhere because she went and filed it, and the only way you found out is when the sheriff showed up to serve you, and that did not happen to me, thank God. My case was she literally disappeared. I went to work. We actually worked together. She said, I don't feel well. I'm taking the day off. I'm taking a sick day. I went, okay. I left at 6:30 in the morning. I came home about 6 at night, and the house was completely empty except for a mattress, a pillow, and one blanket. And there was I didn't even have food, and the bank accounts were empty. That's what happened to me. And yeah, it was. And then I got the summons, right? And I walked into court like a naive 32-year-old man, who had watched, LA Law and Law and Order. And I saw, okay, this is what it's going to be. I'll have all my evidence. And I had a bunch of stuff, and I went in there and it was nothing like what I thought was going to happen. Now, I public speak, so I have no fear of speaking, which gives me an advantage. But it was just funny. As I'm sitting here rethinking of that now and going, geez, where was David then? Because he could have kind of given me some guidance, right? Which is what your goal of your course is, correct?
It is, because we've got guys who can't afford lawyers anymore. They've burned out. They've run out of money, or they spent all they can, or they've been burned so often they're like, this is a stupid system. I can do better myself. And there's times where you representing yourself are your best advocate, and that's a fair statement. That still means, though, that you should do some research. You should understand what it is you're going into court facing, and that's why I created the Dad's Child Custody Action Plan. It's $297 for most people. For the people who are watching and listening to this episode, they're going to get a 20% discount when they use the coupon code MEN2023. So it's men 2023, and you save 20% off 297. I don't even know. I'm not good with math.
And I will put that down in the show notes along with a link to go get it. Just so we're doing that. So can you go into a little bit more detail about what is in there? Because to me, I'm going to be honest with you, this is a steal. I want you to think about what we talked about earlier with the cost of an attorney. For a 1 hour consult for you, let's say I wanted a 1 hour consult with you. How much would that cost me?
So my 1 hour consults are $500.
So it's already cheaper than that.
Already cheaper than that. And normally it's not really an hour. It's like you send me whatever paperwork is. Right. I'll spend some time reading it, and then we'll usually spend an hour to an hour and a half. I usually spend a lot of time with people. So, but the regular hourly wages are even higher.
Right. That's where I was going to go. Higher. That's just the consult you're paying. Let's say $500. Then you're going to get because you're giving much more than what you would in the consult, I'm assuming, right?
Absolutely.
So
because when you get the course, you're not only getting all of the lessons in the course, but you're getting sample documents. You're getting an example of here's a witness list. You get an example of here's an exhibit list. You're getting an example of here's a statement, the declaration that I talked about. Here's how you format that. And there's exhibits that are both the PDF, so you can take a look at it. And then there's the actual template, which has the lines and the numbers on the side so that you can create your own. Because I want guys to have the ability to make that first impression with the judge that shows the judge, hey, this guy gets it. He's actually doing what he's supposed to be doing. And he's done his homework and he's coming across as reputable and credible.
As someone who had to write show cause orders for himself and modification orders and all that stuff, that is worth every penny because I didn't know what the hell I was doing it for. I learned how to do it eventually, right? But now, mind you, this is the 90s. The internet was brand new then. There were no real templates. There were very little
Well, there were if you had a Wang computer.
Well, yeah.
Remember Wang's?
Yes.
Boston company.
I remember they would have these stupid things in there that had nothing to do with what you were supposed to write, fill in and say something and it would say, spot is brown. I'm like, what? And so again, I probably made mistakes, although I learned. And then I eventually, when I had Karen, my attorney, I would actually fill them out because why pay her or a paralegal to do it? And then she would fix them. And more often than not, she would call me and go, that's fine, put it in, I guess I was a paralegal of myself, but patting myself on the back.
And I've had a lot of clients over the years who are capable and smart, and they want me to ghostwrite for them, and they want me to sort of be shadow counsel, and I've done that. I've had multimillionaire clients who are just unbelievably cheap, and they're like, I want you to just tell me what I'm doing is right or wrong and just be my shadow counsel. I'm like, okay. And we do that for people because it's a way in which they can get that unbundled legal services where they're getting the input, they're getting my experience, they're learning from me, and then they're going in and doing their own representation.
And they're getting a form of that through this course, through this pack.
Absolutely.
Because again, I'm trying to help guys that are in that position where you may not be able to afford an attorney, or you're not at the point where you can find an attorney that you're comfortable with. Having this information can make all the difference in the world, especially with regard to a custody case, because you lose a support modification for whatever reason. You can go back in with an attorney, and you may not be able to fix everything, but it's a little. In a layman's term, it's a little easier to fix, right? A custody one.
Well, I always look at it from this perspective. Most men I know don't really care about money that much.
No, they don't.
We're the attitude, whatever, take whatever you want. And if I need more, I'll go make more. I'll get a second job. I'll do whatever I got to do. There's always OnlyFans. But the reality is, if you're giving up time, if you're losing time with your kids, there's nothing you can ever do to get that back. Mm-hmm. That's why it's so crucial to get that part right.
Yeah, I always say to guys, look, the custody portion, whatever that initial order is, a lot of times that's the permanent order. You go into that first hearing and it's, all right, well, you're going to get, Mr. Romand, you're going to get every other weekend, and you're going to get Wednesdays at 6 till 8 to have dinner with the kids. Guess what? 2 years later,
That's no battle. Otherwise, yeah.
2 years later, after the trial and all that stuff, guess what I got? Exactly that,
Yep.
and that's why I always say that that's the most important part to me of your case as a layman and
It is.
speaking it, because the rest of it can kind of, one, it'll fall into place because that determines the child support a lot of times. And, the laws, at least in New York, was very strict on child support, wasn't a lot of leeway. But if, you went in and you lost and you met with an attorney afterward and the attorney like, oh yeah, they screwed up here, we can go in and fix that, because I had that happen. That's one thing.
Right.
Getting a judge to go, yeah, I'm going to give you a couple extra weekends and all that. You might get it, and I did. But it cost me a lot of money to get that too. That's the other thing.
Right.
You're investing more money doing
the other
that.
reason why my course is so important is because you're learning a life skill that, listen, this isn't going to have to be just one hearing. You've probably got years of hearings going on.
Mm-hmm.
You've probably got years of a custody battle that you're going to have to go in and modify. You're going to want to do some changes here. And so when you learn those skills, it's a lifetime skill. It's like riding a bike. Once you know how to do it, it makes it so much easier in the future.
It does, but the other side of it too, for those that say, "Well, I'm going to get an attorney anyway," this can be valuable to you. I'm thinking because it helps you to communicate with your attorney and make them better prepared to win your case for you.
Absolutely.
I've talked with you about this, but I've talked with many attorneys about it. They are unable to win cases because they aren't aware of certain things. I know the one thing you guys hate is getting blindsided with something like, all of a sudden the other side in court brings out whatever.
Right?
And you're like, what the fuck? Why didn't you tell me that was the case? And, it's about, that's why I say you got to have that attorney that you feel comfortable going, this is not me, but, hey, I went to jail 5 years ago for filling the crime. Maybe you should be aware of that. I saw guys who would hide stuff like that.
Right. And I'm like, let me know about that. And let's get it out in front. Let's throw it out there. Let's put it in that declaration on the front end. Don't let it get blindsiding you in the middle of the actual hearing. Let the judge know about that on the front end. Be up like, I'm now a recovered alcoholic. Yes, I went to prison for 5 years because I vehicular manslaughter, whatever. Get it out there so that the judge knows, like, oh, okay, so here's somebody who's not hiding things from me.
Right.
They're not trying to hide the bad. That'll bite you in the butt worse than anything.
Yeah, but it's also sweet when it goes the other way, I have to tell you, because I was able to pull it off on a couple of occasions. What else is
I told you the story of the diva goes down last time we were on.
So. Yeah. What else is in the program? I'm genuinely curious to hear all the stuff that's in it.
So the last thing that comes with this is if you've got questions about your declaration, if you've got questions about any of the courses, there's email access to me. So you can send me an email and I'll get back to you within 24 hours. And that's for the lifetime of your ownership of the program, which is for your lifetime.
Yeah, one time you pay for it, then you have that access. Just to clarify
that's
on
when
that.
When you buy the course a la carte, just the one course, it's $297.
Okay. And then, so what would be, let's assume I'm the Dan of 1994. I know nothing. All right. So I'm going to go purchase your course. How's the best way for me to utilize it to help me set myself up, and more importantly, to ensure that I stay a dad in my kids' lives?
I would say go through the course entirely in one sitting if you can. It's only an hour and a half. And then go back and focus and re-listen to each one with a notebook and take notes so that you can actually really learn the material. Because if you're handwriting things, the mind-body connection makes things so much deeper in our brain, and you'll really understand what's going on that much better.
I'm kind of chuckling because that's what I teach people to do just in general when you're learning something. That's me to a T, right? If I have a video course of some sort, I listen to the whole thing. And a lot of times for me, that I'll learn a lot that way. But then going back through it and taking notes, pausing, stopping, oh geez, this applies to me. Let me put that in. That kind of stuff. That's how it starts sinking in a little bit better. And then the beauty of it is, if I have a question, I can email you and go, hey, you said this in the course. I think this applies this way, and you can give them. Now, obviously, you can't give them legal advice per se because
Right.
if they're not in your state, but you can kind of guide them, correct?
I give people strategy and games. So if you come to me and you're like, here's what's going on, here's what she's doing, here's why I think that's important, I can help you with how to phrase that, how to get the evidence to support that, so that when you're talking to the judge, you're making the argument of, this is why mom's drug addiction is actually a problem. This is why mom's mental health issues are a problem, and it's not in the child's best interest to be in that environment. They need more time with me.
That is worth its weight in gold, is stuff like that. And I try and tell guys this. It's, it's the most, for me, it was the most difficult time of my life, is having to deal with not so much being in the courtroom, because generally I didn't get the decision right then and there. Usually it was afterward you'd get the thing out. I mean, he would say something, but what he says on the bench and what you got in writing sometimes I remember my attorney one time going, he didn't say that. So she went and got the transcript. Had to redo the whole, because usually what they'll say is, here's the decision, who's writing it.
Right.
One attorney or the other gets it, and the other attorney, like, completely different, so stuff like that you got to be aware of too. That. We've all had those horror stories, right? But it was the most difficult time for me because I felt lost. And I honestly believe I was better prepared than most people. And that's the thing that I try and stress to guys in particular is, look, you have to go into this understanding that you don't know anything, even if you do. And I've had attorneys say to me, there's no way I would represent myself in family court, even if I know the law, because it's too emotional. That's the other side of it, right?
And we talked about that too.
I was going to ask, do you address that part of it in the course?
We do. We do address the emotions. And the other thing is we address the order. I provide you with a prepared order, like as a template, so that you make it easy for the judge to give you what you want.
Mm-hmm. And then, so the other part that I kind of want to touch on with all of that is, as you're going through it, should they, and they're taking their notes, should they look for opportunity? I'm not sure how to phrase this. Look for opportunities, not to get the other side. That's not what I mean, but opportunities to present their case better. Because I think, and maybe I want to get your opinion on this, a lot of the times when the guys could have a winnable case, they lose it because of the way they're presenting it.
Or more likely not presenting it.
Well, there you go. That's why I want to.
Here's the thing. Here's what happens a lot.
Okay.
Mom says, Dad doesn't use all the time he already has. He shouldn't get more time. And the judge is like, well, sir, how are you going to disprove that? Well, I use all my time, Your Honor. Okay, that doesn't actually give the judge anything.
Right.
So what I say is you need to have your dad's daily calendar. You've got to have the dad's diary. You've got to have something. And I say just go get one of those desk calendars from like Staples or Office. Is there still Office Depot? Office Depot.
I don't know.
Is there? Desk calendar. I don't remember anymore. And all of the things you do with the kid, just take those receipts and staple it to the calendar. Just so you've got something, so that when you're writing your declaration, you can say, I did this and this and this and this on these dates with the child. And here's the proof. Look at the calendar. Your Honor, it's exhibit number 23. And when you walk into court, you've got it. And then when mom's making these arguments that dad never uses his time and you're putting that in front of the judge is going to be like, well, Mom, sure looks to me like he's using all of his time. I don't think you're telling the truth. Maybe you're a liar.
And I can support David on this because that's exactly what happened in my case. And I kept, did I keep notes? They're still in storage. I still have them. All right. I'm talking every day I kept a diary. If I interacted with her or the kids, I would log the time because I knew what I was going through. Most people probably didn't need to go to this extreme, but I did. What time I picked the kids up. If I was late because there was an accident on the thruway and I couldn't get there fast enough, because I knew damn well she'd take it to court. Well, Your Honor, I was picking them up, supposed to pick them up Friday at 6. However, there was an accident that delayed it. I would pull the newspaper clippings if I had them, Sure. It worked. And I remember them putting me on the stand to testify. and saying, Your Honor, can I have my notebook? And, the opposing counsel was, he doesn't need that, blah, 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 blah. And the judge allowed it. I know it made a difference. Me having that book and referring to it made all the difference in the world. I truly believe that. And something
Absolutely.
as simple
because
as
it
that.
goes to your credibility. It goes to who's telling the truth.
And it maybe correct me on this if you think I'm wrong, but I think it also shows that you understand as a human being, memory's faulty, but if you have that documentation,
Right.
it's much more solid, and the judge is more likely to believe it. It's my opinion. What do you think?
100%. It's that old saying: the faintest pencil mark is better than is better than anyone's memory.
I have never heard that one before. I'm going to steal that and use it. Was it yours? You don't have it trademarked, right? So one thing that just popped in my brain while you were talking before is, you talk about presenting things. And I had recently on the podcast, Jim, he's going through a horrific divorce case. And one of the mistakes he made was he had his ex on the stand. He's representing himself. And he addressed her by her first name. And the judge went apeshit. You will not address her by her first name. You will address her by, her surname. And then, because he's, like you said before, he's like a deer in the headlights. He's nervous. He's all that stuff. A few minutes later, he did it again. The judge, because if you want, I'll put it in the show notes. But long story short.
Sounds like there was a lot of high conflict in that case. And
honestly, David, if you get a chance, you should go listen to it. It's probably as bad a case as I've ever heard. It's right up there.
Yeah.
But the bottom line, what I wanted to make, the point I wanted to make out of that is it might be something as simple as that, not knowing. And it was an innocent mistake because he's called her, I think her name was Liz. He's called her Liz his whole life. But in court, that judge.
And I can see where the judge would be like, "Is that an innocent mistake, or are you trying to manipulate?"
He doesn't know, right? That's the point.
Clicking a button. That's just because you guys are such loggerheads. You hate each other so much, and it's just like, I can see where it would be sensitive to that.
Yeah, I could too. And then the other side of it is, had you gone in and done your research, you might have found out ahead of time that's something the judge looks for. Because every judge has got his quirks, right? So that judge, for whatever reason, that's one of his quirks. But I also see the other side of it. Now, when he was telling me that story, I'm sitting there going, I always use my ex's last name.
And sometimes that's okay. And it
depends on the judge, right?
Basically friendly, and it's not really a nasty divorce. That can work. It can be okay. The problem with family law is this: people want it to be black or white, and it is nothing but gray. It's an endless charade. It's an endless shades of gray on everything.
I'm going to steal your other term you kind of changed from. It is an endless charade. It's a dog and pony show. Let's be honest, right?
Hey, what do I always say? Can I get this one?
Here, let me switch the screen. There, go ahead.
What's the biggest joke in family court?
Oh, for those that are listening, it's under penalty of perjury. Can we spend a couple of minutes on that, just for the fun of it?
Sure.
Because that is something that I hear all the time. Is I know she's lying, but the judge isn't listening to me. And my argument is, well, did you prove she's lying? So when it comes to things like perjury, they're not going to throw her in jail. Let's just be honest about it. It's not going to happen. Let's just set that. But what can you do, and what should you do if it's a blatant lie and you do have the ability to show it's a lie? What should you do?
Oh, you absolutely need to bring that to the judge's attention and prove the other side's lying. I made reference earlier to the case when the diva goes down. And it was one of those where the diva was a former wife who was claiming that she was not remarried and not living with anybody. She had an apartment or a bedroom. She had a bedroom with her cousins in Michigan, and that's where she was living. And she was still getting her $7,000 or $8,000 a month alimony from my guy. And we went and we hired a private investigator, and we brought a case to the judge, and we said we want to terminate alimony because we think that she's no longer single. She's living with somebody. And she filed a response to the court in Orange County, which is extremely conservative Republican, and said, no, I'm not married. I'm living in this room that I'm renting from my cousins in Michigan. Well, we had hired that private investigator who found a court transcript where she had gone into court for the new boyfriend or husband, we're not quite sure, stating that they were married and living together, and that's why he needed to lower his child support. I walked into our court and said, Your Honor, here's a transcript. And the judge looked at the transcript, looked at her response saying she was single, where the transcript said she was married. The judge looked at her lawyer and said, Sir, she's either lying here or she's lying there. Get her out of my courtroom.
I love it.
One of the sweetest moments
I was going to say that had to
be.
be a sweet. I was just thinking the same thing.
It was great.
All right, I want to get things wrapped up, David, but I do want to make an observation, if you don't mind, a quick one. Sure. I happen to be looking over your right shoulder at a little book that you have there called The Boy Crisis. And I am actually listening to it on audio right now. I've read it before. Gentlemen, you need to go buy that book. And David did not write it. It was Warren Farrell that wrote it, who is the man as far as he is my get for this podcast. Warren, if you ever listening, please. All right, let me put myself up. Please, I'm begging you, my friend, because I admire the hell out of him.
Let me see if I can help you on this one, because Warren and I were part of the Global Initiative for Boys and Men, and I am reaching out to Warren because he is going to be speaking at the Tennessee Amplifying Fatherhood Conference the end of September in Nashville, Tennessee, that I'm going to be at.
I have read every...
I'm trying to get Warren.
Yeah.
I want to talk to him.
He is...
Because I want to just have dinner with the man.
I would kill him.
We're both going to be there. Let me buy you dinner.
Where is it? Maybe I'll show up because, I'm fanboying him. I freely admit it. But I have read every single one of his books. And like I said, I'm starting to reread and listen to some of them because they are so powerful and there is so much to be learned from them. And, like I said, he's the one I want because what people may not...
Let me see if I can help you on that, but I'll try.
I would love it because The
Boy Crisis is a phenomenal book. It's a freaking slog. Make no bones about it. It's a thick book and a lot of information in there. But if you are a father who's raising sons or have sons who are already adults, you need to be familiar with this book because what's going on with men in America today is criminal. And this book exposes a lot of it.
It's scary what's in there. I remember when I first read it, I forget what year it came out, but I was like, oh my God. And I know this stuff, but he articulates it and he supports it. This is not like he just makes it up. He's got the bibliography, read through that.
An academic book that's just, good Lord, man. He wrote it with John Gray. Well, I think John Gray wrote one chapter. But
that's right. He did. You're right. Yeah.
And chapter I didn't really like.
So for those that don't know, John Gray wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, or is it the other way around?
Yeah.
By the way, that's a good book too. But I just wanted to mention that because when you were talking, I'd see it behind you and I'm like, I got to mention that before the end of the podcast and I would add, you said dads, I would also say moms, you need to read it too. Especially you single moms, because it will help you. It will help you to understand and it will help you to help your son maintain and thrive because it's just powerful stuff. I don't mean to sidetrack on it, but it was there.
If moms want to be grandmas in their children and their grandchildren's lives, they need to set that relationship up with with their boys, so the boys are choosing good moms for their grandchildren.
Well said, my friend. Very well said on that. All right, so let's kind of put a bow on this. So again, let's talk about the course, how they can get it, the cost, all that stuff.
So it's located at dadslawschool.com. It'll take you right to the sign-up page. It's Child Custody Action Plan. It's 14 modules. It's $297. But because you're listening to Men Need to Be Heard, if you use the coupon code MEN2023, it's MEN, MEN 2023, we'll give you 20% off, which drops it down to, I think, was that $260 or something? Somewhere in there.
You're asking me to do math, David? That ain't happening. All right, and I will put links to everything down in the show notes down below,
Right.
so you can just click on the links if you want. The other thing I want you to kind of promote yourself on is tell people how they can follow you on social media, because I'm going to give you a plug. I know you're a humble man, but I'm going to plug you. The information that David gives out for free on things like TikTok and that, you need to be getting. I don't care whether you're going through a divorce or not, because you may have the best marriage in the world and she may be plotting behind your back and you won't know what's coming. So
I will say she is plotting behind my back.
I know you will. How can they
But if you
follow?
want to find me, you want to go on TikTok. It's at dadslawschool.com is where my education material is. It's dadslawschool.com or at dadslawschool. And I've got at Union of Dads on TikTok, which is sort of a motivational, inspirational, way to go, good job. Also got some educational stuff on there, but primarily it's Dad's Law School on TikTok.
Go follow it. And I will put a link in the show notes. I follow and I watch every video he puts up. And I have no fear of ever setting foot in family court again, but I still value the information that you give. And you get access to a lawyer for free, basically. You're sharing important stuff that people need to know. And I appreciate you, and I want you to know that I appreciate you do that, because a lot of lawyers won't do that. And
thank you.
It means a lot to me, because I'm trying to help guys out, and that's why I say you need to go follow him. You may not like what he says. Sometimes they're not going to like it, but you're honest with them. You're telling them, my favorite phrase, you're telling them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And that's what ultimately matters. I want to thank you again, David, for coming on. And you're going to be a regular guest. I've had you on before. I'm going to have you on again because we just hit it off so well. But I want to give you one final chance to say anything or add anything that we might not have covered. Any final word?
I think the one thing I want to say is that men need to start remembering that it's okay for us to talk about anything with another man. You need to be finding that emotional support when you're going through a divorce or custody battle. Hang out with your friends, give them the emotional support, and you are going through this stuff, but it will pass. There will come a day when you will get back to life, and remember that nothing is permanent.
Amen, my friend. You sound like me, because that's what I tell people all the time. Is it's a dark time. I went through it. I know that, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, even when you think there isn't. Yeah. There will be a time that you will get past it. So, again, thank you for coming on again. I truly appreciate everything that you share with the audience.
Love being here.
And go get it. Go get it. I'll put the links down below. Thank you again, David. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up now. So if you've watched this far, and I hope you have, you didn't skip through things. If you skip through things, go back and watch it, because David gave a lot of good information there. But do me a favor, give me a like. Look, we all know the drill, right? We all know it's an algorithm, and we're all playing the game to get rated better by the algorithm. If you want to help me to help you or help other men, the best thing you can do is like this, share it, comment on it. I would love to get more comments. I get a lot of comments on my videos and on my podcasts. Those help me to help you, because I look at those comments and it enables me to go find experts like David and say, hey, I've got these issues coming up from my audience. I can bring this expert on to talk about it. That's what I'm trying to do for you. This isn't for me. I'm doing this for you. So like, share, comment, all that good stuff. And of course, subscribe. I have a podcast that goes up every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. I also, by the way, and I don't talk about this often, but I go live on TikTok and YouTube Wednesdays at 4 Eastern for 90 minutes. It's 4 to 5:30. Sometimes I do topics. Sometimes it's a free-for-all. Sometimes I let people ask me questions, and I get some fun ones like, how long was my hair in the 80s? They asked me last week. It's just a good time. It's a chance for us to hang out. And sometimes, though, we cover some serious topics. A recent one I did is I talked about how boys are falling behind in education and what we need to do with it. So a lot of good stuff. So check out the lives. And hey, like I said, give me that thumbs up and that like, because that's what helps me to help you. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. You guys have an awesome week, and I'll see you next time on Men Need to Be Heard.